Hello again, and welcome to the Castle Old Skull HAWK Moor project, exploring the secret history of Dungeons & Dragons, Greyhawk, and Blackmoor, as created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson. If you enjoy HAWK Moor, and you want to keep me around on YouTube, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Today, we are going on an epic deep dive, taking the most detailed look at the Great Kingdom, the game world that originated Dungeons & Dragons, that you have ever seen. And here we go. Welcome to HAWK Moor. And what is the Great Kingdom? It is the imaginary world that predates Dungeons & Dragons. For many years, Dungeons & Dragons fans and historians have puzzled over the incomplete map of the Great Kingdom. This is the domain of the Castle and Crusade Society of 1970, as chronicled in the Domesday Book fanzines and elsewhere. The Great Kingdom was designed to host fantastical battles between armies of knights and footmen as imagined by the Castle and Crusade Society in their roles as marshals and generals. This tentative medieval wargame never quite got off the ground, but it did serve as creative soil for two fantasy campaigns which we are quite familiar with. The first was Blackmoor, of Dave Arneson and the Twin Cities gamers to the north, and the second was Greyhawk, of Gary Gygax, Rob Kuntz, and the Lake Geneva gamers to the south. The Great Kingdom map was created in various versions by Gary Gygax with Dave Arneson, who are the co-creators of Dungeons & Dragons in 1973 and 1974, long before they collaborated on their own fantasy game rules. A very informative, province-numbered rendition of this map was shared with researchers by David Megarry. David Megarry is creator of the Dungeons of Pashakata, also known in later form as the popular board game Dungeon. Rob Kuntz, of El Rajaki fame, the co-dungeon master of the Greyhawk campaign, retained valuable notes from about 1971 to 1973, which concerned the secrets of this development and which pertain to the tentative play status of some of the Great Kingdom regions. Significant research contributions relating to this matter were later provided in speculative analysis by people such as John Peterson, Xenopus, and D.H. Boggs. The research that I personally have done, dating back to 2010 in my HAWK Moor Gaming History project, is built upon the foundation these individuals already provided. And now that I am back in the saddle once again, so to speak, and sharing pieces of my ongoing research with you, I can summarize now a little of what I have been able to learn and speculate over the last several years in regard to the Great Kingdom. So let us go on an adventure into mystery and the unknown. The first thing we need to acknowledge is that the Great Kingdom time period is not very well documented. There are many layers to this particular onion, and the origins get obfuscated by many different gaming sagas. The most important of these treasuries of lore include the Brown Hills era battle reports of 1970 and 1971, and also Dave Arneson's Divergent Blackmoor campaign, especially the 1971 gaming region and the 1972 dungeons, which in turn led into Gygax's Divergent Greyhawk campaign of 1973. But there is also the novel Quag Keep, which is set in the Great Kingdom proto-world of Greyhawk in 1976, as well as Dave Arneson's The First Fantasy Campaign, as published by Judges Guild in 1977. Beyond these main sources, there are also the published Blackmore supplement of 1975, the published World of Greyhawk of TSR, especially from 1980 and beyond, and also various later chronological levels of discovery, metamorphosis, and speculation. In this initial glimpse of the 1970 Great Kingdom setting, I am going to provide an overview of the entire region represented by the original map, and then I will drill down some more so that you can understand the depth and breadth of this incredible world of gaming. To gain an understanding of the Great Kingdom's geography, it helps to understand that it is actually a mashed up version of the United States, centering upon the Great Lakes region, the Lake of Unknown Depths, Near Div, or, as Gary sometimes jokingly called it, the Near Dive, is a rough representation of Lake Michigan. The Great Bay to the north is Lake Superior, but opened up to the ocean. The published version of Near Div, by the way, is a near exact mimic of Lake Superior, but you need to keep that 1980 and 1981 development of the published TSR World of Greyhawk folio, as well as Darlene Peckle's iconic poster maps, out of your mind for now, if you want to understand the original mystery of the Great Kingdom, because those commercial products already represent an additional layer of chronological confusion over the original setting. Trying to match the original Great Kingdom directly to the later commercial world of Greyhawk, piece by piece, will only end in tears. So we need to look before Greyhawk to understand the Great Kingdom and its secrets. The major reason for this Great Lakes focus is simply because the early members of the Castle and Crusade Society tended to be centered in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, or the Twin Cities in Minnesota. If you look at my research map here, you will see that region number 37, the county of Yarrow-Cundy, is the future home of the Free City of Greyhawk. And this is basically medieval Wisconsin. The town of Lake Geneva would be a bit to the southwest of these numerals. Gary's game in 1973 would play out mostly in this area. Region number 30 is the Archbarony of Blackmore, future home of Dave Arneson's campaign. Arneson's campaign, especially in 1971 to 1972 and onward, would play out mostly in this region. Adding a layer of confusion, however, you need to understand that the geographical nature of the map does not correspond directly to the proposed Great Kingdom strategic gaming areas of 1971 before the two separate fantasy campaigns got going. In other words, Gary and Dave did not center their original Great Kingdom realms directly upon the corresponding homes in the real world. Gary, in the strategic Great Kingdom play-by-mail wargame that never fully happened, situated his own Earldom of Walworth, not in the location of Walworth County, Wisconsin, but rather in the more northerly region marked Walworth, W-A-L, on my research map. Gary might have placed his center of power there because King Robert I, Rob Kuntz, as positioned in the nearby Royal Domain regions. You can see a small asterisk between the northern and southern domain areas, and that is the primary castle capital of the Great Kingdom proper, later to become known in the world of Greyhawk as Roxas. Similarly, region number 30, Blackmore, does not correspond directly to the Twin Cities either. Dave Arneson, perhaps with a mind toward strategic importance of an unopposed naval base region, situated his own barony in the place that corresponds to Duluth and Superior, Minnesota, at the far western point of the Great Bay, otherwise known as Blackmore Bay. The twin cities in the Great Kingdom are actually situated approximately in region number 31, which is the Duchy of Ten. This would become the symbolic source of feudal rivalries against both Blackmoor, the Arneson wargaming and role-playing campaign, as well as Walworth, the Gygax wargaming and role-playing campaign. Region number 1, the Duchy of Pendal of the Outer Marches, corresponds to the border region between Fantasy Minnesota, Blackmoor and Ten, and Fantasy Wisconsin, which is off to the southeast. They are called the Outer Marches because they represent the last tamed lands before the wilderness borderland region of Blackmoor Barony is reached. This becomes a bit important because one of the plots in the later Blackmoor campaign involved the Minnesota border regions harassing the Wisconsin border regions. As David Megory once stated, there is an implication that the Duchy of Ten was encroaching on the Great Kingdom and cutting off Blackmoor from the Great Kingdom. In other words, the Duchy was trying to keep Blackmoor as part of Fantasy Minnesota, severing it from Fantasy Wisconsin. Symbolically, this becomes quite interesting when we think about the actual rivalry between Gygax and Arneson and the creative difficulties that would arise from having these two campaign designers sharing the same setting map as an imaginative, yet not fully collaborative, basis for the two major adventuring playgroups. There were other instances of crossing the streams between these two regions. For example, when Dave Arneson had a player in the role of Royal Inspector, this inspector journeyed from the Great Kingdom up to Blackmoor. Or, in the City of the Gods scenario, when Mordenkainen, as played by Gary, and Lord Robbelaar, as played by Rob Kuntz, adventured in the Blackmoor region by traveling up from the southern Greyhawk area. But I will completely tangle the understanding of Great Kingdom mysteries if we go off on those tangents at this time, so we are not going there in those stories right now, but we will tell those tales in the future, I promise. Looking at the Great Kingdom in detail, we can see how marches and trade caravans crossed over the world. Because of the extreme distance by sea, Regions 1 and 15 served as the overland bridge between the Heartland realms of Rob Kuntz and Gary Gygax, connecting them to the far frontier realms of Dave Arneson. Later, I will reveal how numbered realms 1 through 18 correspond to tentative play areas in the Great Kingdom that were sometimes assigned to other members of the Castle and Crusade Society. Numbered realms 19 through 43, in my own theoretical scheme, correspond to other provinces beginning at the upper left of the map, moving down to lower right. If you follow the numbering sequence, you will see that regions 1 to 18 form a clockwise encircling surround of regions, orbiting Walworth and King Robert's domain, beginning at that crucial border area between Minnesota and Wisconsin. Also, if you follow numbers 19 through 41, you will see how I used the top left map corner on down to the lower right to keep things somewhat intuitive as we discuss. To be clear, these numbers correspond to my own research, not to any numbers designated by the Great Kingdom map designers themselves. Areas 42 and 43 correspond, to the best of my ability, to significant play areas of the later Greyhawk games, featuring the Wild Coast and the Temple of Elemental Evil, respectively. On the research map, you will note that I have designated each land with my understanding of the noble hierarchy of the realm: baronies, earldoms, counties, marches, duchies, and kingdom, as well as the name of the place, and then parenthetical notes which pertain to, for example, assigned players or other persons, later changes in the game timeline, and corresponding real-life locations. And now we can discuss the regions of the Lords, which are numbers 1 through 18. Realm 1 is the Duchy of Pendle of the Outer Marches. This is the crucial link between Blackmoor, Fantasy Minnesota, and the Great Kingdom, Fantasy Wisconsin. As an interesting coincidence, Pendle, P-E-N-D-E-L, pertains to the Latin word pendulum, something that methodically sways back and forth between two extremes. Region number 2 is the County of Barris. There is a 1973 note that Count Barris is the brother-in-law of King Robert I. In what is likely a coincidence, the word Barris is the Catalanian plural word for wilds or outlands. This is also roughly the region of the Bear Beach Wilderness area in the real world. Region number 3 is the Barony of Varan. There is a 1973 note that Baron Varan is allegiant to the Great Kingdom. Realm 4 is the hold of the Grand Knight Clydesdon. Sir Clydesdon's title is Grand Knight OMS, which would be a knightly order. Other OMS order characters belonged to Gary Gygax, Bill Linden, Jeff Perrin, Terry Kuntz, and Tom Webster. Realm 5 is interesting. It is the Barony of T. Kuntz. This land belongs to Terry Kuntz. His character, perhaps synonymous with the fighter Tarek of later Dungeons & Dragons, or perhaps not, is noted as a Chamberlain, Baron, and OMS. Realm number 6 is the Principality of Lindwill, the Lord Prince of Arms. This appears to be the play area designated specifically for Bill Linden. Realm 7 is the hold of the Justicar Rustel. This is the play area that was apparently reserved for Russell Tulp. See also Realm 11, which I will discuss in a little bit here. Realm number 8 is the Duchy of Ramsword. A 1973 note indicates that Duke Ramsword is allegiant to the Great Kingdom as well. Region number 9 is the March of Marquis Palatine Fours. Nothing is yet known of this region, at least not to me. Realm number 10 is the Earldom of Madison. This might indicate a similarity to Dane County and Madison, Wisconsin, but other than that, I do not know much about this area. The closest thing I have to a hint at the moment is found in Gary Gygax's 1971 Battle of the Brown Hills Battle Report, which notes that the forces of chaos in that scenario were played by the Madison Group. See also Realm 17, which we will discuss in a little bit. Moving on, Realm number 11 is the Shire of Sheriff Haxel. It appears that this subrealm is allegiant to the hold of Justicar Rustel. Haxel probably indicates that this was the play area that was designated for H. Axel Krigsman, Jr., whose character is designated as a sheriff. Realm number 12 is the March of the Marquis Morzed. A 1973 note indicates that Marquis Morzed is also allegiant to the Great Kingdom, but I know very little about this realm. Coincidentally, however, Morze, M-O-R-Z-E, is the Polish word for sea. Realm number 13 is the Lost Land, as annexed by Walworth County. This land is controlled by the Earl of Walworth, played by Gary Gygax. This might correspond to the Shield Lands in the later World of Greyhawk. Realm number 14 is another lost land, also annexed by the Earldom of Walworth. This land is controlled by the Earl, and it might correspond to the Horned Society in the later World of Greyhawk. Realm number 15 is the Duchy of Felwyn. Duke Felwyn is listed in a 1973 note as the holder of the Four Ways. This realm is clearly very important from a geographic perspective, as it allows land travel between Blackmoor and the rest of the Great Kingdom. Realm number 16 is the Viscounty of Lamar. A 1973 note indicates that Viscount Lamar is also loyal to the Great Kingdom. Realm 17 is another lost land, as annexed by Walworth. This land is controlled by the Earl, and it appears that this land belonged to Earl Madison for a time, but then it was conquered or otherwise taken over by Gygax. Realm 18 is the Unnamed Land. This land is undesignated in any notes that I can find. It might indicate the end of the efforts to assign the encircling lands to players in the Castle and Crusade Society or thereafter. And now that we have considered the Great Kingdom's encircling surround, we can also consider the regions beyond, number 19 through 43. Realm number 19 is the Hold of Iron Hand. This area has probably changed to the Hold of Stonefist in the published World of Greyhawk campaign. Realm number 20 is the County of Hither and Yon. This area is sometimes, due to sloppy spelling, termed the County of Hither Body, but I personally believe it might be the County of Hither and Yon. It's still not certain. This does not appear to be mere poetic license, because in the Battle of Brown Hill's Battle Report of 1971, Gygax notes the city of Hither and the town of Yon, along with several other geographical locations found elsewhere. The Hither Hills are noted in the Quag Keep novel as well. Realm 21 is the lands of the Northern Barbarians. The distinctive shape of this peninsular area shows us that it is similar to the Thunder Bay and Sibley Peninsula region of northern Lake Superior in the real world. In Greyhawk, there are three regions of the Frost, Ice, and Snow Barbarians. There are Viking raiders in the Blackmoor campaign, and this is certainly a logical region for them to reside in. We will ignore for now how the lyrics of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song, released in November 1970, seem to perfectly match up with the campaign situation here, as well as Blackmoor's position on the farthest western shore. Realm number 22 is the Kingdom of Batulia. This area seems to correspond roughly with the holdings of the Sea Barons in the later World of Greyhawk. Realm number 23 is the Panem Kingdom. This land of pagans corresponds to the plains of the Paynims in the later published Greyhawk. Realm number 24 is a bit infamous. It is the Egg of Coot. While there is not enough room to go into all of the details here, this was the Nemesis invader swarming region that constantly battled against the barony of Blackmoor and its allies. Realm number 25 is the Duchy of Maritz. This island realm is briefly mentioned in Quag Keep. At a guess, the word Maritz might allude to maritime, indicating a duchy of mariners, but that is a guess on my part. Apparently, sea serpents are found in this region, but that might just be an Andre Norton invention. Realm number 26 is called the March Slove. Very little is known about this Yatil Mountain region, but it might also mean the Slow March. Perhaps this is a difficult area to move troops through, or perhaps it means Slave March, a realm where slaves are taken from. The Middle English word slove is taken from slive, to cut something and separate it from a larger thing or place, but this, again, is probably a coincidence. Realm number 27 is the Northern Nomad Lands. This region might roughly correspond with the Tiger Nomad Lands in the World of Greyhawk. Amusingly, this area is geographically analogous to North Dakota. Realm number 28 is the southern nomad lands. This region might correspond with the wolf nomad lands of Greyhawk, and it is also geographically analogous to South Dakota. Realm number 29 is the County of Sellet. This region appears to be synonymous with the Duchy of the Peaks in Arnes's Blackmoor campaign. And Realm 30 is the Archbarony of Blackmoor. As of 1973, there are notes indicating that Dave Arneson was the controller of the barony, while Tonesborg and Svenny's Freehold, or Svensson's Freehold, as played by Greg Svensson, are both listed as nearby subrealms. Lord Robbelaar is the major domo of Blackmoor Castle. Trade with Blackmoor is briefly mentioned by Gary Gygax in his story The Gnome Cache, chapters 6 and 7. As we move on, exploring away from the realm of Blackmoor, realm number 31 is the Duchy of Ten. This region, in the approximate location of the real-world Twin Cities, when compared to Duluth and Lake Superior, is very significant to the Blackmoor campaign. As David Megory once recalled, there is an implication that the Duchy of Ten was encroaching on the Great Kingdom and cutting off Blackmoor from the Great Kingdom, as we previously mentioned. This was one of the keynotes that widened my discoveries of new research possibilities pertaining to the shared Great Kingdom map and its secrets. Realm number 32 is the County of Stabilny. This, to me at least, is an unknown region, but interestingly, the word Stabilny is a Polish word that means a stable condition. This might be a neutral buffer region between rival powers. Realm number 33 is the Marches of Perrinland. This land, spelled Perrinland with an E in the world of Greyhawk, was named in honor of Jeff Perrin, Gary Gygax's co-author for the Chainmail medieval wargame rules. In Gygax's 1970 Sajkonth adventure, we read, for example, several decades ago, the Archmage Igwilv brought the Marches of Perrinland under his domination. Realm number 34 is the Neron March. This is probably the Great Kingdom origin of what eventually became Grand March in the published world of Greyhawk. It was perhaps later named Neronland. Refer, for example, to Gygax's The Gnome Cache, Chapter 5. Realm number 35 is the Grand Duchy of Geoff. In the 1976 adventure by Gygax, we read that the lost caverns of Sajkonth are hidden somewhere in the no man's land between the Duchy of Geoff and the forsaken Sea of Dust. This area is also mentioned in the original version of Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, with the peaks proper being the natural barrier against the Sea of Dust. Realm number 36 is the Kingdom of Faraz. This land of holy lords apparently worships a tin god. At some point, forces of Walworth invaded the lands of Faraz. This might be prehistory that occurred in the region of the Temple of Elemental Evil and the Village of Hamlet campaign. Realm number 37 is the County of Yarrowcundy. This distinctly shaped peninsula echoes the shape of Door County in Wisconsin. In later Greyhawk, it seems that Faraz and Yarrowcundy, with the Fara and Undi, were represented as the kingdom of Furiondi. Realm number 38 is Keoland. The kingdom of Keoland was named in honor of Gygax's good friend Tom Keogh. Realm number 39 is a contested area. This area marks the borderland between the southern reaches of the Great Kingdom and the petty baronies of the Wild Coast. Realm number 40 is the Grand Duchy of Ernst. This land is probably named for Gary Gygax or his father. For example, Grand Ernst might mean Father Ernst. Realm number 41 is the Kingdom of Katmaloon. Little is yet known, but this region might roughly correspond with the Kingdom of Nyrond in the later world of Greyhawk. Realm number 42 is the Wild Coast. This region seems to have been very active in play around 1973 and 1974, with small baronies being carved out by Terry Kuntz, Jim Ward, and other players. This likely indicates that the Great Kingdom map was proving to be a bit difficult to build the Greyhawk world out with, as the established lands did not provide enough unconquered wilderness frontiers for new lords to lay claim to. Realm number 43 is the Gnarlywood Borderlands. This is the likeliest region for the Greyhawk campaign that featured the Temple of Elemental Evil, as I will explore more deeply in a future episode of HAWK Moor. In later adventures, we will be exploring some of these other places that are hidden away in this early proto-world of Greyhawk, including the Lost Caverns of Sajkonth, the Barrier Peaks, the vast swamp, and a little place that is known as the Tomb of Horrors. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have found this theoretical exploration of the Great Kingdom enlightening. I will see you next time. Take care.